Welcome! We're about to dive into some really powerful advice from a 1966 article in a Hanjiki Hood. It's all about a habit that so many of us have, finding fault in other people. And it explores the hidden dangers of it. You'll see, the perspective feels just as real and relevant today as it must have back then. Right off the bat, the article doesn't pull any punches. It opens with this incredibly direct, really powerful statement that just sets the stage for everything else. This one sentence, well, it's the foundation for the whole piece, and we're going to unpack exactly what it means. Okay, let's get into it. So first things first, let's get to the root of the problem. The article wants us to really understand the mindset we're talking about here, what it's like to be someone whose main way of seeing the world is through a critical lens. The text calls this having a ninda swabhavam, which basically translates to a blaming nature. And it's so important to get this. This isn't just about, complaining every once in a while. We're talking about a fundamental way of being that actively poisons your relationships by creating dislike and hostility all around you. Now, the article is really clear that this kind of behavior isn't just a single action with one simple consequence. Oh no. Instead, it kicks off a totally predictable downward spiral, a destructive chain reaction. It all starts with a simple, almost karmic idea. The negativity you're putting out there doesn't just vanish into thin air. It boomerangs. The article states it plainly. If you make a habit of blaming others, you will, without a doubt, become a target of blame yourself. And from there, it's like watching dominoes fall. This behavior triggers a clear four-step process of social decay. It starts with the blame. Because of that, people pull back their sympathy. Then they pull back their support. And the final, logical step, as the article points out, is total isolation. You end up cut off from your own community. This leads to what's basically a simple but devastating social math. The fault finder is always, as the text says, decreasing their friends and increasing their enemies. You can think of it like this. Every time you criticize, it's like you're making a withdrawal from your social bank account, and eventually you're going to be bankrupt. The piece then hits us with this really powerful rhetorical question. And it's designed to make you just stop and think about the basic logic of how people work. I mean, it makes sense, right? If all you're putting out there is judgment and negativity, how on earth could you expect to get warmth, friendship, or loyalty back? But here's the thing. The social fallout is just the start. The article argues that this path of constantly finding fault leads to a much, much higher price in the end. And the language the article uses here is just, wow. It's incredibly strong. It calls the final outcome pranan takamaina asapalata, which translates to a fatal failure. This isn't just about hitting a rough patch. The warning here is that this path leads to a complete, catastrophic failure in life. And just to drive the point home, the author kind of throws down a challenge to the reader. They ask, can you think of a single person in all of history who was a chronic fault finder and still managed to achieve real, lasting success? The implication is pretty obvious. You can't. But it's not all doom and gloom. The article doesn't just leave us with that stark warning. It gives us a powerful contrast by showing us a totally different and way more rewarding way to live. The text holds up the example of Satpurushulu, or virtuous people. And what makes them so different? It's how they handle criticism. They take it, even when it's awful, but they break the cycle. They refuse to blame back. They don't try to harm their critics. And the result? They're the ones who are ultimately admired and looked up to by the world. So, when you boil it all down, the article is laying out a fundamental choice between two very different paths. On one side, you have the blamer, who's heading straight for isolation and that fatal failure. And on the other, you have the revered person, who takes the criticism, refuses to fight back, and ends up earning honor and respect. And that really brings us to the core message of this whole piece from 1966. How you deal with the flaws you see in other people. Well, it's not just some minor personality quirk. It is a defining choice that will directly and profoundly shape the entire course of your life. So as we wrap this up, the wisdom from all those decades ago suddenly becomes a really personal, really immediate question for every one of us. Looking at these two outcomes, the path of the blamer and the path of the revered, which one are you going to choose?